Now let's study the IS curve. Before we draw the IS curve on the graph, I would like you to understand the several points related to the IS curve. First, IS curve shows the relationship between the real interest rate and real GDP. Second, the IF curve shows the equilibrium in the goods market. It's based on what we learned previously, the Keynesian cross. So now let's derive the IS curve. As we mentioned, this model is based on the Keynesian cross model. First, let's draw the Keynesian cross model. The aggregate expenditure, the real GDP, (45-degree) line shows the output Y. This upward sloping curve shows the aggregate expenditure. So we know the potential GDP or equilibrium GDP, equilibrium aggregate expenditure. But the IS curve is show the relation between the real interest rate and the total GDP. So we have draw another graph. We put the GDP here, and the real interest rate, we use a little r, put it on vertical axis. To connect these two models, we extend the GDP level Y0 to this graph, and we indicate as Y0. Suppose under this GDP level, we have a corresponding interest rate R0. If real interest rate R goes up, what happened? Real interest rate will affect aggregate demand side. We write down the aggregate expenditure as C plus I plus government spending plus net export. If real interest rate increase, could this affect one of the components here? Actually, you will find out when the real interest rate increase, consumption could be affected. With the higher level of the interest rate, the household will borrow less loans. So household will buy less houses, autos, depending on the loans. This means high level of the real interest rate will lead to the lower level of the consumption. So consumption reduce. Not only that, you can also see the higher level of the interest rate will lead to the lower level of the investment. Because with a high level of the interest rate, firm will borrow less to buy machine and equipment. So the investment reduce. Plus, higher level of the interest rate will push up the value of the domestic currencies. So it will also reduce the net export. So with the lower level of the consumption, investment, and the net export, aggregate expenditure will go down. So with a higher level of interest rate, R1, suppose, the aggregate expenditure will shift downwards. Again, we assume this is a parallel shift. With the new aggregate expenditure curve, we can determine new equilibrium output and new equilibrium aggregate expenditure. So new equilibrium output is at Y1, so we extended the Y1, the line, to this graph here. So which means at a higher level of interest rate R1, we have another point here, Y1. Initially, the economy is at R0 and Y0. So with the 2 points on the graph, we actually can show what is the curve look like. We connect these 2 points. This is what we call IS curve. So IS curve is a downward sloping curve. It means if the real interest rate increase, it will cause a reduction in the consumption, investment, and the net export. So it will lead to the lower level of output. Similarly, if the real interest rate reduces, the output will increase. So this relationship here, the negative relationship between the real interest rate and the GDP, is described by IS curve.